Clara Bernal was 22 years old, pretty, sweet, and absolutely adored by those around her. Unfortunately, she caught the eye of an obsessed stalker who decided that she was going to become the sole purpose of his existence. This is how 3 coffee dates turned into a year of hell and ended in an absolute tragedy. Here's the story of Clara Bernal and the man that took her life inside Britain's biggest department store in full view of employees and customers. Let's get into it. Claire started working at Harvey Nichols, an exclusive British department store, as a skincare consultant. It was the perfect job for Claire. She was well put together, she knew her products, and she looked like she walked straight out of a magazine every day. If this wasn't 2005, Claire would have been a beauty influencer. She was that good. She shared a flat with 2 other girls who worked at Harvey Nichols in Southeast London. Claire, a small-town girl, was ecstatic to be moving to the big city and to be working at one of the most prestigious established places in the beauty world, no less. To say that her family and co-workers loved her would be an understatement. Claire was sweet, kind, gentle, and a lot of people describe her as angelic. It's hard not to like a girl who only has good things to say about everybody. In the 2 months that she was there, Claire was not romantically involved with anyone. She was focused on settling in and making a good impression at work. But Michael Pesh, the store's security guard, was about to change that. Michael, a former Slovakian soldier, was serious, handsome, and not at all like the other party boys in London. When he asked Claire out on a date, she was flattered and said yes. Claire's mother, Tricia, and her best friend, Michael Ward, weren't too happy about the matchup. Michael was in the middle of a divorce, and at 30 years old, he was 8 years Claire's senior, which they felt was a little too much of an age gap. But it was Claire's concerns over his behavior that was more alarming. After just one date, Michael insisted on walking Claire to and from work. He got annoyed if she canceled plans with him to hang out with friends, and it seemed like every waking moment inside their workplace and outside, Michael was there. If Claire wasn't inside her house, she couldn't get rid of him. In the first week of what Claire thought was just a few casual coffees, Michael declared his love to Claire. 3 weeks into a relationship that was making Claire increasingly uncomfortable, Michael took a 2-day trip to Slovakia, and upon his return, he demanded that he sleep over at Claire's flat. His excuse was that he had a very heavy suitcase that he couldn't lug across London just then. Claire's flat was closer to the airport, so spending the night wasn't too much of an ask, right? Big mistake. Michael spent one night there and just refused to leave. After a few days, Claire, sweet, gentle Claire, finally had enough. She told him firmly that if he wasn't gone within the next hour, then she'd be calling the police. When he walked out, she locked the door and told her 2 flatmates not to open it under any circumstances. Michael stood outside the flat for 2 hours, calling her more than 20 times before giving up, taking his luggage, and leaving in a cab. 3 weeks. 3 weeks was all it took for a monster to emerge. An obsessive creature that had only one target in his sights, and that target was Claire. Sweet and gentle Claire, who'd never in her life done anyone any harm. Michael positioned himself in their workplace so that he could observe Claire at all times of the day. If he was stationed at a door, he'd stand where a mirror could catch her in sight. If she went to the bathroom, he'd be outside the door when she got out, and he escorted customers kindly to the pretty girl behind the counter, just so he could find an excuse to touch her arm. Claire tried to ignore him, but after a week, Michael started begging her to take him back in front of their co-workers. He also attempted to convince other people on the payroll to try and talk to Claire into taking him back. Claire was beside herself with worry and anger that he dare put her dream job on the line with this kind of drama. Again, Claire told him firmly to stop, both at work and the dozens of phone calls in a day that went unanswered. This was creepy, unacceptable, and it was frightening her. By month 3 in February of 2005, Michael started following her home in the evening. One night, he grabbed her on the street and firmly told her that he loved, and she loved him too. In full view of alarmed streetgoers, Claire told him no again, desperately trying to back away from him. But he had his grip on her shoulder and wouldn't let go. He told her that she was a stupid little girl who didn't know what she was talking about. When people around them started closing in, attempting to intervene, Claire took the distraction and ran home. At this point, Claire should have reported the incident to police, but her docile nature made her retreat even more. She stopped mentioning the harassment to coworkers and to her best friend and mother. Claire was ashamed, frightened, and unsure of how to handle this whole situation. If Michael wasn't breaking into her house or physically assaulting her, what was she supposed to report to police or friends? 50 phone calls a day wasn't technically breaking the law either, but by withdrawing into herself, Claire was playing into exactly what Michael wanted. She was becoming more and more isolated, away from people who could help. Claire's world was shrinking. She was caged with only a predator for company. At work, at home, at the grocery store. Wherever she went, Michael was somewhere in the vicinity watching her. Only her two roommates had some inkling that something was very wrong. They saw him outside on the street every day, and Claire's health started suffering from the stress. She got eye infections, colds, and rashes, and she wasn't sleeping anymore. By month 4, Michael's text messages started to turn violent. He threatened to kill himself if they couldn't be together. And the next day, he'd tell her that it was their 4-month anniversary and that he wanted to take her out to dinner. The next day, he'd tell her that if he couldn't have her, then no one could. Right after, he told her that the blouse she wore that day matched her eyes beautifully. Clearly, Michael was spiraling into madness, and he was just gaining speed the longer he was left to operate freely. On March the 30th, Claire was taking the train home after work. When she saw Michael behind her, she ran for it, but Michael squeezed into the train just in time and sat down opposite her. Claire, again in full view of several witnesses, told Michael to stop following her. She got off. She attempted to run to the exit, hoping that the crowded street above would give her some coverage to get out of sight. Michael caught up to her again, and this time he violently pushed her to the ground. Claire threatened to report him to police, to which Michael replied that if she did, he'd kill her. This is the point that Claire actually had the fodder she needed to file a police report. He'd now physically attacked her, and he threatened to kill her, and there were plenty of witnesses around to confirm the interaction. But it would be the employees at Harvey Nichols that ended up stepping in first. Even if Claire tried to pretend that she was fine, even they were disturbed by Michael's very obvious obsessive behavior. They reported it to their bosses, and the head of security came forth with CCTV footage showing Michael spending almost every waking moment of the day staring at Claire from across the room. Michael was suspended on the spot. The head of security, Peter McCormick, cornered Claire, telling her to report Michael to the police. He'd been a police officer himself, and he saw the danger signs before anyone else did. He'd been watching Michael for a while, and he told her that the time to be polite was over. If she didn't report this now, this would almost certainly get worse. Several things happened then. Given that Michael now had an open investigation for death threats against him, the department store had enough reason to fire him. They called him into the office to sign the paperwork, but police were waiting for him there. He was arrested for the death threats and the harassment. He pleaded guilty to harassment, which only carried a minor fine, in exchange for dropping the death threat charges. Big mistake. This meant that Michael was out on the street just 2 days after his arrest. Even with the restraining order in place against Michael, Claire's roommates insist that they all move to another flat and that they all change their numbers. They weren't going to let their friend out of their sight now. They also notified Claire's parents of the situation. These girls did everything in their power to keep their friends safe. On the day that they were loading their possessions into the car to move, Michael was standing across the street again, just 48 hours after being arrested. The girls called police, but he'd already disappeared by the time they'd arrived. 4 days after his release, on April the 10th, Michael tracked down Claire's new address, and he was arrested on the sidewalk for breaking the conditions of his restraining order. This time, police take a more proactive stance. They officially charge him with threatening to kill Claire. The nature of his original harassment charges don't carry any jail time, but threatening to kill someone, well, that's a different matter. Since Michael wasn't charged with any outward physical violent act, he was allowed out on bail to await his day in court. In the months leading up to the trial, Michael disappeared. For months, Claire didn't see him. She didn't get texts or calls, and no one at work saw him either. For a moment, everyone breathed easier. Claire's mother even took her on a birthday trip to Italy to treat her after the harrowing 4 months of stalking. In the 6 months after that arrest inside the department store, Claire even got a boyfriend, and the two of them were already talking about getting married. Life was good for Claire, at least for a moment. Michael was using this time to go home to Slovakia. With his court date looming over him, he wasn't supposed to leave England at all, but he managed to cross multiple borders without anyone realizing that a criminal was passing through. In Slovakia, Michael wasn't planning on visiting family or even to flee from the law. He went there for a very specific reason. In Slovakia, he had no criminal record, so he was free to obtain a firearm license and to purchase a handgun. With his background in the military, the process went remarkably fast. The reason he was able to cross borders and get licensed to carry a firearm with those charges against him was because his case hadn't officially gone through the courts yet. Michael's crimes were not on record for Border Patrol to pick up on. Even the system in Slovakia set up for gun control is incredibly strict, so he didn't technically do anything illegal over there that would raise concerns, but it's clear that he was planning this well in advance. With the courts, police, Claire, and all of her people keeping him from possessing her, Michael was going to take matters into his own hands. He returned to the country on the 20th of July with plenty of time for his trial on the 30th of August. To Claire's surprise, Michael pleaded guilty, avoiding a full trial and for a reduced sentence. He only got a few months of community service, and yet again, Michael was free to walk, stalk, and wallow in his obsessions. On the 13th of September, Michael took his Luger and a whole bunch of cocaine to give him the courage to do what he'd been planning to do for months. He knew the department store inside and out, so getting in through a side door was no trouble. He chose 8 o'clock in the evening because the store was about to close and security would be occupied with ushering customers out of the doors before they closed. 1 minute, Claire was rearranging the lipstick counter, and the next, Michael was behind her. She hadn't seen him in almost 6 months, but that time had only served to give Michael the time to come to a decision. He was going to stay true to his word. If he couldn't have Claire, then no one else would. He raised the gun and fired a single shot to the back of Claire's head. When she fell to the ground, he proceeded to fire 3 more shots into her face. He fired a 5th shot into the ceiling, forcing the guards that attempted to approach him to retreat. Before they could even think of what to do next, Michael turned the gun on himself and ended his own life. Now, we can sit here all day and criticize the police for failing Claire, and we can overanalyze the psychology behind Michael's actions. But the sad fact of all this was that technically, police did everything they were supposed to do. Claire did everything she was supposed to do. Her friends, colleagues, and family did everything they were supposed to do to protect her. Michael just got lucky because his case hadn't gone through the courts yet. The system isn't designed to tackle dangerous stalking situations head on. If the crime isn't physical and the stalking is done from afar, what other legal bounds are being crossed other than a creepy man standing across the street? Is it any different than what people do to celebrities every day? What I'm trying to say is that there are deeply disturbed people all around, every single one of us every day, and unless we somehow design a system that can accurately screen every potential obsessive murderer, well, how do we combat this horrendous reality? Because Claire isn't the first woman to be the victim of an obsessive stalker that would rather kill her than allow her to live a full, happy, and meaningful life. And she certainly won't be the last. I wish I could end this off with some good news or a brilliant solution to keep women safe, but it doesn't change the fact that Michael Pesch didn't suffer from his sins. There's no justice here. Claire was sweet, kind, and greatly loved. She was going to get married, have kids, and she was going to grow old, illuminating everyone's lives around her. But no, she and all her loved ones were robbed of that basic human right, all because one sick individual decided that 3 coffee dates gave him the right to decide another human being's fate. But you're always welcome to share your ideas in the comments below. How can we possibly put an end to a global problem? A problem that's racking up bodies at an alarming rate. I always look forward to your 2 cents, and leave a like and subscribe while you're at it. You're the ones keeping evidence obscured on the air, and your engagement is what makes all of this possible. See you in the next one, people. Cheers.